I'm Stella, and I'm 28 years old. 3 days ago, I came home to find my sister Maya hosting a house tour for potential buyers of my apartment, the apartment I've been paying for since I was 22, the one I saved for through college while working 2 jobs and eating ramen noodles for months. Maya was standing in my living room, clipboard in hand, discussing square footage and neighborhood amenities like she owned the place. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt completely betrayed by family. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. Now let me tell you how I got here, because trust me, this story gets so much worse before it gets better. But spoiler alert, it definitely gets better. My family has always treated me like their personal ATM. My parents, Robert and Linda Johnson, perfected the art of emotional manipulation wrapped in family guilt. Stella, honey, you know how tight things are right now. Could you help with the mortgage payment? Or my personal favorite, we raised you for 18 years. The least you can do is help out when we need it. Maya, my younger sister, was supposed to be different. While our parents trained her to be their precious princess who couldn't possibly work full-time because her delicate constitution required focusing on her studies, I foolishly believed she was just caught in their web. I thought if I protected her financially, she'd eventually break free and become independent. How naive can one person be? Apparently, very. I'd been covering Maya's student loans, car payments, and even her rent for the past 2 years, all because she was building her career in marketing and needed time to establish herself. Meanwhile, I was working 60-hour weeks at a financial consulting firm, living modestly, and funneling my hard-earned money to keep my family afloat. The apartment situation started 6 months ago, when I decided to take my first real vacation in 5 years. A week in Costa Rica, my one indulgence after landing a promotion that finally allowed me to breathe financially. Maya offered to house sit and take care of Bruce Lee, my 3-year-old golden retriever who's basically my child. Of course I'll watch Bruce Lee, she'd said, hugging me at the airport. He's like my nephew. Go enjoy yourself, sis. You deserve this. I should have known something was wrong when I returned to find my mail organized in neat piles. Maya's version of organization usually involved shoving things in random drawers. But I was jet-lagged and happy to be home with Bruce Lee, who practically knocked me over with excitement. It wasn't until 3 days later that the real bomb dropped. I was walking Bruce Lee around the block when Mrs. Henderson from 4B stopped me. Stella, dear, I'm so sorry to hear you're selling. The apartment market is crazy right now, but I hope you get a good price. I laughed, thinking she'd confused me with someone else. Oh, Mrs. Henderson, I'm not selling. Maybe you're thinking of the unit in 3A? Her face went pale. But I saw the listing online. Your apartment, 5C. The realtor even showed it yesterday while you were at work. My blood turned to ice. What realtor? That evening, I did what any rational person would do. I called Maya. Hey, what's up? She answered, sounding perfectly casual. Maya, someone told me my apartment is listed for sale. Do you know anything about that? Long pause. Too long. That's weird. Maybe it's a mistake. A mistake that involves someone giving tours of my apartment? Stella, you're being paranoid. Who would even do something like that? But I knew. Even as she deflected and made me feel crazy for asking, I knew. The next morning, I found the listing online. There it was. My apartment, photographed beautifully, described as a motivated seller's dream opportunity. Listed by Bradley & Associates Real Estate, with Maya Johnson as the contact person. Maya Johnson, my sister, using my last name like she had every right. I called the real estate office, pretending to be an interested buyer. Hi, I saw the listing for the apartment on 5th Street. Is it still available? Absolutely, that's a beautiful unit. Miss Johnson has been very motivated to sell quickly. We actually have another showing scheduled for this afternoon if you'd like to see it. Miss Johnson. My sister was selling my apartment. I hung up and stared at my phone, trying to process what I'd just learned. Then I did something I'd never done before. I called in sick to work. I needed to see this for myself. At 2 p.m., I positioned myself across the street from my building. Sure enough, a sleek black sedan pulled up, and a woman in a sharp business suit emerged. She was followed by a young couple who looked like first-time buyers, all nervous excitement and shared glances. And then I saw Maya, my little sister, dressed in one of my blazers, the expensive one I'd bought for client meetings, walking toward my building like she owned it. I watched through my building's lobby window as Maya led the couple to the elevator. She was animated, gesturing enthusiastically, clearly in full sales mode. This wasn't some confused mistake or misunderstanding. This was deliberate, calculated. This was my sister actively trying to sell my home out from under me. The showing lasted 45 minutes. When they came back down, the couple looked impressed. The realtor shook Maya's hand professionally, and I could see them scheduling something on their phones. I sat in my car, hands shaking, trying to understand how my own sister could do this to me. But more importantly, I was trying to figure out how she thought she could get away with it. That's when I remembered something I'd forgotten in all the chaos of the discovery. Something that was about to turn this whole situation around. 6 months ago, when I'd upgraded my home security system, I'd installed cameras throughout the apartment. Not just the obvious ones by the front door, but discreet ones in the living room, kitchen, and home office. Maya didn't know about the cameras. She had no idea that every conversation, every document she'd signed, every moment of her betrayal had been recorded in crystal clear HD video. As I sat there watching my sister shake hands with the realtor who was helping her steal my home, I realized something important. For the first time in my adult life, I held all the cards. And Maya was about to learn that I was done being the family pushover. Let me back up and explain how I became my family's personal piggy bank, because understanding my past will make what happens next so much sweeter. It started when I was 16. My parents sat me down for what they called a family financial planning meeting. Sounds official, right? What it actually was. A guilt session designed to make me feel responsible for everyone else's money problems. "Stella," my father said, spreading out bills on the kitchen table like he was dealing cards, "you're the smart one in this family. You understand responsibility." Translation: "You're the one we can manipulate most easily." "Maya's still young," my mother added, stroking my sister's hair like she was petting a cat. "She needs time to figure herself out. But you've always been mature for your age. Even at 16. I knew this was problematic. But when your parents spend your whole childhood telling you that being responsible and helpful makes you the good daughter, you believe them. The first request was small. Could I use my part-time job money to help with groceries this month? Dad's commission was late, and Maya needed new school clothes for her junior year. Of course I said yes. I wanted to be helpful. I wanted to be the daughter who saved the day. That was my first mistake. Once you establish yourself as the family bailout fund, you never stop being one. College was where things got really ridiculous. I qualified for academic scholarships and worked 3 jobs: campus bookstore, weekend catering, and tutoring rich kids in accounting. I lived in the cheapest dorm, bought used textbooks, and survived on dining hall food and whatever snacks I could afford. Meanwhile, Maya decided she wanted to attend a private college 3 states away. No scholarships, no job, just dreams of sorority life and spring break trips. Guess who my parents called when the tuition bills came due? "Stella, sweetheart," my mother said during one of our weekly guilt calls. "You know how proud we are of you for being so independent. Maya's having a harder time adjusting to adult responsibilities." Right. Because they'd never asked her to have any. "She's struggling with her course load, and we think adding a job would be too stressful. Could you help with her expenses? Just until she gets on her feet?" I was eating instant oatmeal for dinner while tutoring calculus to pay my own rent. But sure, let me send money to fund Maya's social life. The pattern continued after graduation. I landed a good job at Morrison Financial Consulting. Not through connections or family help, but because I'd graduated summa cum laude and impressed them during a rigorous interview process. Finally, I thought, I could start building my own life. Wrong again. Dad's construction business hit a rough patch. Mom's part-time retail job didn't cover their mortgage. Maya was exploring her options after college, which apparently meant living at home, sleeping until noon, and spending her days at yoga classes and coffee shops with friends. "Just temporarily," became the family motto. Everything was always temporary. The help they needed, Maya's unemployment, their financial struggles, all temporary situations that required permanent solutions from me. I bought my apartment at 25, thinking I was finally establishing independence. It was a modest 1-bedroom in a decent neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. I could afford the mortgage, utilities, and still send money home because, despite everything, I loved my family. Here's the thing about being the responsible one. You convince yourself that your sacrifices are noble. You're helping. You're keeping the family together. You're being the bigger person. What you're actually doing is enabling a system where everyone else gets to be irresponsible while you carry the load. Last year was when I should have drawn the line. Maya had been between jobs for 8 months. Not unemployed, between jobs, as if she was carefully selecting between multiple amazing offers instead of binge-watching Netflix and posting Instagram photos of her elaborate brunches. Dad called me on a Tuesday morning while I was reviewing quarterly reports for a major client. "Stella, we've got a situation." In Dad speak, situation meant financial crisis that requires your immediate attention and money. Maya's student loans are in default, If we don't bring them current, it's going to affect her credit score permanently. Here's what he didn't mention. Maya had been ignoring the loan payments for 6 months, not because she couldn't afford them, but because she'd decided they weren't a priority. Shopping was a priority. Daily Starbucks runs were a priority. Student loans, those were future Maya's problem. How much? I asked, already knowing I was going to pay it. $18,000. I nearly dropped my phone. $18,000? It sounds like a lot, but think of it as an investment in Maya's future. Once her credit is protected, she can get a good apartment. Maybe a car loan, really start building her adult life. With whose money? I wanted to ask, but I didn't. I transferred the money that afternoon. That was 3 months before I planned my Costa Rica trip. 3 months before I stupidly trusted Maya with my apartment keys. 3 months before I discovered that the sister I'd been protecting and supporting was actively trying to sell my home behind my back. You want to know the most infuriating part? I'd been planning to help Maya with a down payment on her own apartment when I got back from vacation. I'd saved an additional $15,000 specifically for that purpose, because I genuinely wanted her to have the independence I thought she craved. Turns out she didn't want independence. She wanted my apartment. She wanted my life, just handed to her without the work, the sacrifice, or the years of eating ramen noodles to afford it. But here's what Maya didn't understand about me. Being the responsible one doesn't make you weak. It makes you strategic. It teaches you to plan, to think ahead, to document everything. Those security cameras I'd installed, they weren't just for package theft protection. I'd learned to be careful about everything in my life, including protecting my own property. The previous tenant had warned me about building management occasionally doing inspections without proper notice, so I'd invested in a comprehensive system. Every angle of my apartment was covered. Motion-activated, cloud-stored, time-stamped video evidence. Maya thought she was smart, using my week away to set up her real estate scheme. What she didn't realize was that I'd been watching every single move she made through my phone app while sipping pina coladas on the beach. I had footage of her measuring rooms, staging furniture, and even bringing that realtor over for a preliminary assessment 2 days into my vacation. But the best part, the absolute best part, was the video of her in my home office, sitting at my desk, practicing forging my signature on legal documents. Have you ever watched someone you love betray you in real time? It's horrifying and oddly liberating simultaneously. Horrifying because you're watching proof that they never really loved you back. Liberating because you finally have permission to stop sacrificing yourself for people who see you as nothing more than a resource. Tomorrow, I was going to have a conversation with Maya. But first, I needed to make sure I had all my evidence organized. Because this time, I wasn't just going to be the responsible one. I was going to be the one holding all the cards. And Maya was about to learn what happens when you try to steal from someone who spent her whole life cleaning up other people's messes. The next morning, I did something I'd never done in my adult life. I took a personal day specifically to deal with family drama. Usually, I'd try to handle these situations around work, during lunch breaks or after hours, because my job was the one thing in my life that was actually mine. But this required my full attention. I made coffee, the expensive kind I usually save for weekends, and settled in front of my laptop to review 6 months' worth of security footage. If I was going to confront Maya, I needed to understand exactly what she'd been doing and when. The first surprise came from the very first day of my vacation. I'd left Maya detailed instructions for Bruce Lee's care, emergency contacts, and explicit permission to stay in the apartment while I was gone. What I saw on the footage made my stomach turn. Within 2 hours of my departure, Maya was going through my personal documents. Not looking for Bruce Lee's vet information or anything practical, she was in my bedroom, rifling through my dresser drawers, examining bank statements I kept in my home office, even photographing financial documents with her phone. This wasn't opportunistic behavior. This was premeditated. Day 2 got worse. Maya brought someone over, a woman in a business suit who spent an hour measuring rooms and taking photos. Even more damning, they were clearly discussing renovation possibilities and market value. I watched my sister gesture around my living room like she was already planning where to put her own furniture. But day 3 was when Maya crossed the line from betrayal into outright fraud. The footage showed her setting up my laptop on the kitchen table, surrounded by official-looking documents she'd clearly obtained from somewhere. For the next hour, I watched my baby sister practice forging my signature. Not just casual attempts, she had samples of my real signature from birthday cards and old documents, and she was methodically perfecting her technique. I had to pause the video. Seeing my own sister deliberately preparing to commit identity theft was like watching someone I loved die in real time. The next few days showed Maya meeting with the realtor, bringing over potential buyers for preliminary viewings, and even having what appeared to be serious negotiations about listing prices and closing timelines. By day 5, she was confident enough to start showing the apartment to serious buyers. I screenshotted every frame that showed criminal activity and organized them chronologically: forgery, fraud, identity theft, illegal entry for commercial purposes. Maya had unknowingly created a documentary of her own crimes. But the most revealing footage was from yesterday evening, after I'd confronted her on the phone. I watched Maya pace my living room, clearly agitated, making phone calls I couldn't hear. Then she opened my laptop again and started deleting browsing history and clearing recent files. She knew she was in trouble, and she was trying to cover her tracks. What Maya didn't realize was that my security system uploaded everything to cloud storage in real time. Deleting files from my laptop did absolutely nothing to the evidence I'd already downloaded. Around noon, I decided to take Bruce Lee for a walk, partly because he needed exercise, but mostly because I needed air and thinking time before making my next move. Bruce Lee has always been a good judge of character. He loved Maya when she was genuine, but lately, he'd been acting strange around her, less enthusiastic, more cautious. Now I understood why. Dogs can sense deception, and Maya had been lying to all of us for months. My phone rang while I was sitting in the park, watching Bruce Lee chase squirrels. Maya's name flashed on the screen. "Hey," I answered, keeping my voice neutral. "Stella, I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, about the apartment listing." "Here we go," I thought. Time for more lies. "I did some research, and I think there might have been some kind of identity theft situation. Someone might have used your information to create a fake listing." The audacity was breathtaking. She was actually going to try to convince me that someone else had stolen my identity, when I had video footage of her practicing my signature. "That's terrible," I said. "Have you reported it to the police?" Long pause. "Well, I thought maybe we should talk to the family first. You know how Dad gets about involving authorities in family business." "Of course. Bring Dad into it. Make this about family loyalty instead of criminal behavior." "You're right," I agreed. "We should definitely handle this as a family." "Great. Why don't you come over for dinner tonight? Mom's making that pasta you like, and we can all figure out how to handle this together." A family dinner. How perfectly typical. When Maya screwed up, the solution was always to bring in the parents so they could collectively pressure me into letting it slide. "I'll be there," I said. "What time?" 6:30. "And Stella? Don't stress about this. We'll figure it out together." After hanging up, I sat in the park for another hour, planning my approach. I could arrive at dinner with printed screenshots and legal documents, lay out Maya's crimes like evidence in a courtroom, and demand justice. But that's what the old Stella would have done. The old Stella, who always hoped her family would do the right thing if she just presented the facts clearly enough. The new Stella understood something crucial. My family had never been interested in justice. They were interested in maintaining the status quo that benefited everyone except me. So I was going to try a different approach. I was going to give them exactly what they expected: confused, concerned Stella, who needed their help solving this mysterious problem. I was going to let them think they were manipulating me while I gathered even more evidence of their true character. Because here's what I'd learned from years of being the family problem solver. Sometimes the best way to catch people in lies is to give them enough rope to hang themselves. At 6:25 p.m., I knocked on my parents' front door, carrying a bottle of wine and wearing the concerned expression of a daughter seeking family guidance. Maya opened the door with a hug that felt like betrayal wrapped in performance art. "I'm so glad you're here," she said. "We're going to get this whole mess straightened out." Yes, we were. Just not in the way she was expecting. Over dinner, I was going to find out exactly how deep this conspiracy went. And by the end of the evening, everyone at that table was going to understand that the family pushover had officially retired. Walking into my parents' house that evening felt like entering enemy territory, except the enemies were people who'd known me since birth and thought they could predict my every move. Mom had indeed made her famous garlic pasta, the same meal she'd used to soften me up before countless financial requests over the years. Dad was already halfway through a beer, which meant he was in "let's all be reasonable adults" mode. Maya hugged me again at the door, and I noticed she was wearing my earrings. The silver hoops I'd bought myself for my birthday last year. Small detail, but telling. In Maya's mind, what was mine was already hers. "So," Dad said as we settled around the dinner table, "Maya told us about this identity theft situation. Sounds like a real mess." I nodded, taking a bite of pasta. "It's been so stressful. I can't understand how someone got access to enough of my information to list my apartment. These scammers are getting more sophisticated," Mom chimed in. They probably got your details from some data breach and figured they could make quick money. The lies came so easily to them. Oh, I wondered if they'd practice this conversation, or if deception was just their natural language. The weird thing is, I continued, the realtor I spoke with said the contact person was named Maya Johnson. Same last name as ours. What are the odds? I watched Maya's face carefully. She didn't flinch, but her chewing slowed slightly. That is weird, she said. Probably just a coincidence, though. Johnson's a pretty common name. Definitely, Dad agreed quickly. The important thing is figuring out how to get this sorted out without damaging your credit or causing legal problems. Legal problems. Interesting choice of words from someone supposedly innocent. Actually, I said, setting down my fork, I've been thinking maybe I should just sell the apartment myself. The reaction was immediate. Maya nearly choked on her wine. Mom's eyes lit up with excitement, and Dad leaned forward with sudden interest. Really? Mom asked. That's a big decision, honey. I know, but maybe this identity theft thing is a sign. I've been carrying the mortgage by myself, plus helping everyone else with expenses. Maybe it's time to downsize, get some financial relief. I was laying bait, and they were taking it eagerly. That's very mature thinking, Dad said. Real estate market's good right now. You could probably get a nice price. The thing is, I continued, I'd want to keep it in the family. Maybe Maya could help me navigate the sale. You know, since she's been so good with practical things lately. Maya's poker face was impressive, but I caught the split-second calculation in her eyes. She was trying to figure out how to position herself as helpful, while hiding her existing knowledge of my apartment's market value. I'd be happy to help, she said carefully, though I don't have much experience with real estate. Don't sell yourself short, I replied. You've always been smart about these things. The conversation continued through dessert, with my family gradually warming to the idea of me selling my apartment. They made helpful suggestions about staging, pricing, and timing. Mom even offered to help with packing, which was rich considering she'd never offered to help me move in. What struck me most was how easily they assumed this decision would benefit them. Dad started talking about how the sale proceeds could help me get ahead financially, meaning have more money available for family emergencies. Mom mentioned that Maya had been looking for a place to rent, and wouldn't it be wonderful if I could help with her deposit once I had extra cash? They were already spending my money, and I hadn't even decided to sell. Around 9 p.m., I excused myself to use the bathroom, but actually went to the kitchen to refill my water glass. I could hear their voices from the dining room, speaking in the hushed tones families use when they think they're having a private conversation. This could work out perfectly, Mom was saying. If Stella sells and downsizes, she'll have money freed up right when Maya needs to get settled. We just have to make sure she doesn't get any crazy ideas about keeping all the profits to herself, Dad replied. She needs to remember that family comes first. Maya's been so helpful with this whole identity theft thing, Mom continued. Stella should show some appreciation. I stood in the kitchen, listening to my parents plan how to manipulate me into funding Maya's life with the proceeds from selling my home, and something inside me crystallized into diamond-hard clarity. This wasn't just Maya acting alone. This was a family conspiracy. They all knew. Maybe not the specific details of Maya's fraud, but they knew she was involved in the apartment listing. They were using the identity theft story to cover for her, while positioning themselves to benefit from whatever outcome emerged. I returned to the dining room with renewed purpose. You know what? I said, settling back into my chair. I think I'm going to call that realtor tomorrow, the one who's supposedly been dealing with the fake listing. Maybe I can learn more about how this identity theft happened. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Are you sure that's wise? Dad asked. Sometimes it's better to let sleeping dogs lie. But I want to understand how someone got so much detailed information about my apartment. They knew my address, square footage, even my phone number. These scammers have ways, Maya said quickly. They're very sophisticated. Still, I persisted, the realtor might have seen whoever was pretending to be me. Maybe there's security footage or something. The panic in Maya's eyes was subtle but unmistakable. You know what might be easier? Mom suggested. Why don't we just have the listing removed and forget the whole thing? No harm, no foul. No harm, no foul. Except for the fraud, identity theft, and betrayal of trust. Maybe you're right, I said. I just hate the idea of someone getting away with using my name. We finished the evening with promises to stay in touch about my decision to sell, and Maya offered to help me research the real estate market. She actually volunteered to handle the preliminary research while I focused on work, which was brazenly perfect. As I drove home, I realized my family had just shown me exactly who they were. Not through their words, but but through their assumptions. They assumed I would never discover Maya's involvement. They assumed I would prioritize family harmony over personal justice. They assumed I was still the pushover who would sacrifice anything to keep everyone else happy. Tomorrow, I was going to prove all of those assumptions wrong. But first, I had a phone call to make to Bradley and Associates Real Estate. It was time to have a conversation with the realtor who thought Maya Johnson was authorized to sell my apartment. And after that conversation, I was going to give my family one more chance to tell me the truth. If they chose to keep lying, well, then they were about to learn what happened when you underestimated Stella Johnson. The next morning, I called in late to work and dialed Bradley and Associates Real Estate at exactly 9 a.m. Time to see how deep this rabbit hole went. Good morning. This is Jennifer at Bradley and Associates. How can I help you? Hi, Jennifer. I'm calling about the apartment listing on 5th Street. I'm Stella Johnson, the owner. Pause. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Stella Johnson. I own the apartment that's currently listed for sale with your agency. Longer pause. Let me transfer you to Amanda Bradley. She's been handling that listing. While I waited on hold, I pulled up the voice recording app on my phone. In my state, I was legally allowed to record conversations as long as one party, me, knew about it. Ms. Johnson? Amanda Bradley had a crisp, professional voice. I have to say, this is a bit confusing. We've been working with Maya Johnson on this listing for several weeks. I know, that's my sister. But I'm the actual owner of the apartment. Your sister? But she's been representing herself as the owner. She provided documentation. This was interesting. What kind of documentation? Well, I have copies of what appear to be ownership papers with her signature, and she's been very knowledgeable about the property details. Of course she has, I thought. She's been living there. Ms. Bradley, I think there's been a significant misunderstanding. Maya doesn't own the apartment. I do. And I never authorized any listing. The silence stretched long enough that I wondered if she'd hung up. Ms. Johnson, if what you're saying is true, this is a very serious situation. We're talking about potential fraud. I'm afraid it is true. I can provide documentation of my ownership, mortgage statements, whatever you need. I think we need to meet in person. Can you come in today? Absolutely. What time works for you? We scheduled a meeting for 2 p.m. That gave me the morning to gather my documentation and prepare for what was likely to be a very enlightening conversation. I spent the next hour organizing files. My original purchase agreement, mortgage statements, insurance documents, tax records, everything that proved I was the sole owner of my apartment. Then I prepared a USB drive with the most damning security footage from Maya's week of deception. At 11 a.m., my phone rang. Maya. Hey, I've been thinking about your apartment situation, she said, sounding upbeat. I did some research last night and I found some good real estate agents if you decide to sell. The nerve was astounding. She was calling to recommend real estate agents while already working with one behind my back. That's so thoughtful of you, I replied. What agents did you find? Well, there's this company called Bradley and Associates that seems really professional. They specialize in quick sales for motivated sellers. I had to admire the strategy. By recommending the agency she was already working with, Maya could later claim she was just being helpful when the truth came out. Bradley and Associates, I repeated. I'll look into them. Great. And Stella? I know this whole identity theft thing has been stressful, but don't let it rush you into any big decisions. Take your time figuring out what you really want. What I really wanted was for my sister to stop lying to me. But that ship had sailed. Thanks, Maya. You've been so supportive through all of this. That's what sisters are for. After hanging up, I sat staring at my phone. Maya's performance was flawless, concerned, helpful, innocent. If I didn't have video evidence of her crimes, I might actually believe she was just being a good sister. But I did have evidence. Hours of it. At 2 p.m. sharp, I walked into Bradley and Associates with a briefcase full of documentation. Amanda Bradley turned out to be a woman in her 40s with the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd been dealing with real estate drama for decades. Ms. Johnson, she said, shaking my hand. I have to say, this is one of the more unusual situations I've encountered. I imagine so. Can you tell me exactly what my sister told you? Amanda pulled out a thick file. Maya Johnson contacted us 6 weeks ago, saying she needed to sell her apartment quickly due to a job relocation. She provided what appeared to be proper documentation of ownership and seemed very familiar with the property details. What documentation specifically? Copies of ownership papers, mortgage information, property tax records. Everything appeared legitimate. I opened my briefcase and pulled out my originals. These are the real documents. You can compare signatures and dates. Amanda examined my papers carefully, then pulled out Maya's submissions. Even I could see the obvious differences. Maya's forged signatures were close but not perfect, and several of the dates were wrong. "Oh my God," Amanda breathed. "She falsified everything." "It gets worse." I handed her the USB drive. "This contains security footage from my apartment showing Maya preparing these documents and meeting with you for property viewings." Amanda's face went pale as she realized the implications. "Ms. Johnson, we need to involve the police immediately. This is fraud on multiple levels." "I know, but first I need to understand something. Did Maya sign any binding agreements with your agency?" "She signed a listing agreement authorizing us to market the property. If she doesn't actually own it, then she committed fraud by signing documents claiming to be the owner." Amanda nodded grimly. "We'll need to cancel the listing immediately and notify anyone who's made offers." "How many offers?" 3. One of them was quite serious. A young couple planning to put in an offer this week. Maya had come incredibly close to actually stealing my apartment. If I hadn't discovered the listing when I did, if those buyers had moved forward, if a sale had been initiated with forged documents. "Ms. Johnson," Amanda said carefully, "I have to ask, is it possible Maya believed she had some legitimate claim to the property? Could there have been a misunderstanding about ownership?" "No misunderstanding. The apartment is mine, bought with my money, in my name only." Maya knew she was committing fraud. Amanda was quiet for a moment, processing the implications for her agency. "We'll cooperate fully with any legal proceedings. We had no idea we were facilitating fraud." I left the real estate office with a promise that the listing would be removed immediately, and that Amanda would provide written documentation of Maya's deception for legal proceedings. But I wasn't ready to involve the police yet. First, I wanted to give my family one final opportunity to tell me the truth. That evening, I called Maya. "I had an interesting conversation today," I said without preamble. "Oh? About what?" "About my apartment listing. Apparently, the identity thief has been very active. Meeting with real estate agents, signing documents, even scheduling showings." Silence. "Maya? Are you there?" "Yeah, I'm here. That's really disturbing." "It is. In fact, the situation is so serious that I think we need to involve the police." "The police? Stella, don't you think that's a bit extreme? I mean, no real harm was done, right?" And there it was. Maya's true concern wasn't my welfare or justice. It was avoiding consequences. No real harm? "Maya, someone impersonated me and tried to sell my home." "I know, but maybe we could handle this privately. You know how Dad feels about involving authorities in family matters." "This isn't a family matter. Maya, this is a crime." "Stella, please, can we talk about this in person? I really think we should discuss this with Mom and Dad before making any big decisions." Another family meeting. Another attempt to pressure me into letting criminal behavior slide for the sake of family harmony. "Fine," I said. "Tomorrow night. But Maya? This is the last time we're handling this as a family. If I don't get complete honesty from everyone, I'm filing a police report." Okay, that's fair. I'm sure we can work everything out." After hanging up, I realized something had fundamentally shifted in how I viewed my family. For years, I'd believed their financial exploitation came from desperation or poor judgment. I'd convinced myself they loved me but just had different values about money and responsibility. Now I understood the truth. They didn't see me as a person deserving of respect and consideration. They saw me as a resource to be managed and manipulated. Tomorrow's family meeting wasn't going to be about reconciliation. It was going to be about consequences. And this time I was walking in with all the evidence I needed to prove that Maya hadn't just committed fraud. She'd done it with my parents' knowledge and support. Time to find out if my family valued truth more than convenience. Though honestly, I was pretty sure I already knew the answer. The second family dinner in 3 days. If I didn't know better, I'd think we were becoming close. I arrived at my parents' house at 7 p.m. carrying my laptop bag and the same bottle of wine from Tuesday night, still unopened because I'd been too focused on gathering intelligence to drink. Maya answered the door again, but this time her smile looked strained. "Hey, thanks for coming." Mom had made her second-tier comfort food, meatloaf and mashed potatoes. Not the special pasta treatment, but still a clear attempt at emotional manipulation through carbohydrates. "So," Dad said as we settled around the table, "Maya explained that you're worried about involving the police in this identity theft situation." Not how I would have phrased it, but okay. "I'm concerned about the implications," I replied. "Whoever did this had access to very specific information about my apartment and my personal details." "These scammers have sophisticated networks," Mom said. "They probably bought your information online." I nodded thoughtfully. That's what I assumed initially, but then I spoke with the real estate agent today. The collective tension was subtle but unmistakable. Shoulders stiffening, chewing slowing, eyes avoiding direct contact. "What did they say?" Maya asked, her voice carefully neutral. "Interesting details about the person who's been impersonating me. Apparently, this imposter has been very involved in the listing process. Multiple meetings, document signings, property showings." "Wow," Dad said. "They really committed to the scam." "They did. In fact, Amanda Bradley, that's the realtor, was impressed by how knowledgeable this person was about my apartment, almost like they'd been living there." Maya's fork clinked against her plate. "The most fascinating part," I continued, "is that this imposter used the name Maya Johnson. And according to Amanda, she looked to be in her early 20s, blonde hair, about 5'6". Quite a coincidence." The silence stretched until it became uncomfortable. "Stella," Mom said finally, "what exactly are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Someone using Maya's name and matching Maya's description has been trying to sell my apartment." "That's impossible," Dad said quickly. "Maya's been helping us around the house this week." "Has she? All week?" More silence. "Look," Maya said, setting down her fork. "I know how this looks. But I swear to you, I had nothing to do with any apartment listing." I opened my laptop. "I was hoping you'd say that." "What are you doing?" Mom asked nervously. "Something I should have done Tuesday night. I'm going to show you the security footage from my apartment." The panic was immediate and visible. Maya went pale, Dad started to object, and Mom reached for her wine glass like she was grabbing a life preserver. "Stella," Dad said, "I don't think this is necessary. We believe you about the identity theft." "Do you?" "Because your reaction suggests otherwise." I turned the laptop screen toward them and pressed play on the first video. Maya going through my personal documents on day 1 of my vacation. "This is dated 6 days ago," I said calmly. "That's Maya in my apartment, photographing my financial statements." Maya's breathing became shallow. "Stella, I can explain." "I hope so, because there's more." I played the footage of Maya meeting with Amanda Bradley for the first time, then the video of her practicing my signature at my kitchen table. "This is particularly interesting," I said, pausing on a clear shot of Maya holding a pen over legal documents. "That's Maya, preparing to forge my signature on real estate contracts." "Turn it off," Mom whispered. "We're not done yet." I played the footage of Maya giving apartment tours to potential buyers. "And this is Maya 3 days ago, showing my apartment to people interested in buying it." By the time I closed the laptop, Maya was crying, and my parents looked like they'd aged 10 years. "Well," I said, "anyone have anything they'd like to share?" Maya broke first. "I'm so sorry, Stella. I never meant for it to go this far." "How far did you mean for it to go?" "Exactly what was the plan here? I was so tired of living at home. I needed my own place, and I knew you had extra money from your promotion. So you decided to steal my apartment?" "Not steal. I thought maybe if I could show you how much the apartment was worth, you'd consider selling and helping me buy something smaller." The logic was breathtaking in its selfishness. "By impersonating me and forging legal documents?" I panicked when you started asking questions. I thought if I could just get through the listing process, maybe we could figure out a solution together. I turned to my parents. "And you two? When did you find out?" Mom looked at Dad, who cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Maya told us about her plan on Monday night. Before or after I called asking about the apartment listing?" "Before," Dad admitted. "So when I came here Tuesday night asking for help with this identity theft, you all knew Maya was the one who'd been impersonating me?" "We thought it would be better to handle it privately," Mom said. "Maya made a mistake, but she's family." "A mistake." I let that word hang in the air. "Maya committed identity theft, fraud, and forgery. That's not a mistake. That's a series of deliberate criminal acts." "Stella, please," Maya pleaded. "I'll fix this. I'll call the realtor and explain everything. We can make this go away." "It's too late for that. Amanda Bradley already knows the truth. She's required to report fraud to the authorities." The room erupted in panicked voices. Maya begged me to call Amanda and convince her not to report anything. Dad suggested we find a lawyer to handle this quietly. Mom wanted to know if there was a way to make this disappear. I listened to my family frantically trying to figure out how to avoid consequences for Maya's crimes. And I realized something important. They weren't sorry about the betrayal. They were sorry about getting caught. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, standing up. "I'm filing a police report tomorrow morning. Maya is going to face legal consequences for her actions, and I'm done financially supporting any of you." "You can't be serious." Dad said. She's your sister. She's also a criminal who tried to steal my home. Stella, Mom said desperately, think about what this will do to our family. I am thinking about it. For the first time in my adult life, I'm thinking about what's best for me instead of what's most convenient for everyone else. I packed up my laptop and headed toward the door. Where are you going? Maya called after me. Home, to my apartment. The one you tried to sell. Stella, wait, Dad said. Can't we work something out? Maya could pay you back, do community service, something other than involving the police. I turned back to look at them. Maya sobbing, Mom wringing her hands, Dad desperate to fix this without consequences. You know what the saddest part is? If Maya had just asked me for help buying her own place, I probably would have said yes. I've been sending you money for years, bailing everyone out of financial problems, never asking for anything in return. We know, Mom said. And we're grateful. No, you're not. You're entitled. You think my money belongs to you. You think my apartment belongs to Maya. You think I exist to solve your problems without expecting basic honesty in return. I opened the front door. But here's what you never understood about me. Being generous doesn't make me weak. Being responsible doesn't make me a pushover. And being family doesn't give you the right to commit crimes against me. Maya ran after me onto the front porch. Stella, please. I'll do anything. I'll get a job. I'll pay you back everything. I'll move out of state if you want. Just please don't destroy my life over this. I turned to face my sister, the person I'd protected and supported and loved unconditionally for 28 years. Maya, I said gently, you destroyed your own life the moment you decided to steal from me. I'm just refusing to clean up your mess this time. As I drove home, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. Not happiness exactly, but the deep calm that comes from finally stop carrying weight that was never yours to bear. Tomorrow I would file that police report. Maya would face legal consequences. My parents would have to deal with their financial problems without my help. And for the first time since I was 16 years old, I would wake up knowing that my money, my apartment, and my life belonged only to me. But first, I had one more surprise for my family, because while they'd been planning Maya's real estate scam, I'd been planning something of my own, something that would ensure they understood exactly how serious I was about being done with their manipulation. Have you ever had to establish firm boundaries with family members who saw you as their personal ATM? Share your experiences in the comments below. You're definitely not alone in this struggle. Friday morning, I woke up with the kind of clarity that comes from finally knowing exactly what you need to do. Bruce Lee was already sitting by my bedroom door, tail wagging, somehow sensing that today was going to be different. Morning, buddy, I said, scratching behind his ears. Ready for an adventure? I'd spent the night researching my legal options and making a timeline of Maya's crimes. The evidence was overwhelming. Video footage, forged documents, testimony from the real estate agent, and digital records of every fraudulent transaction. But before I filed that police report, I had one more card to play. At 9 a.m., I called my office and took a personal day. Then I called Maya. Stella, she answered on the first ring, voice bright with false hope. I'm so glad you called. I've been thinking about our conversation last night, and I have some ideas for how we can fix this. I'm sure you do. Can you meet me at my apartment in an hour? I want to show you something. Of course. Should I bring Mom and Dad? No, just you. After hanging up, I spent 30 minutes setting up my laptop and organizing printed screenshots from the security footage. I wanted Maya to understand exactly how much evidence I had before we moved to the next phase. She arrived at 10:15, looking nervous but trying to project confidence. She was wearing a different outfit than the night before, but the same hopeful expression of someone who still believed she could manipulate her way out of consequences. Thanks for giving me a chance to explain, she said, settling onto my couch. Bruce Lee, notably, went to his bed instead of greeting her. Before you explain anything, I said, I want you to see something. I opened my laptop and pulled up a compilation video I'd created overnight. Every piece of incriminating footage edited together chronologically. Maya meeting with the realtor, forging my signature, staging my apartment for buyers, even the moment she deleted files from my computer thinking she was covering her tracks. As the video played, Maya's face went through a fascinating progression. Surprise, embarrassment, panic, and finally resignation. How long have you known? She asked when it ended. I've been watching you in real time since day 2 of my vacation. Every conversation with Amanda Bradley, every forged document, every lie you told our parents. Maya's shoulders slumped. So when you came to dinner Tuesday night, I was giving you chances to tell the truth. You chose to lie. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. What do you want me to do? I want you to understand something, Maya. This isn't about money or jealousy or family dynamics. You committed serious crimes, identity theft, fraud, forgery. These are felonies. I know. And I'm sorry. I was desperate and stupid, and I thought I could figure out a way to make it work for both of us. By stealing my home? By showing you that you had options. Stella, you've been killing yourself financially supporting all of us. I thought if you sold the apartment, you could get out from under the mortgage, and we could both start fresh. The rationalization was impressive. In Maya's version, committing fraud against me was actually helping me. With whose money was I supposed to start fresh, Maya, after giving you the proceeds from selling my apartment? She didn't have an answer for that. Here's what's going to happen, I said. In 1 hour, I'm going to the police station to file a report. You can either come with me and cooperate fully, or you can wait for them to come find you. Stella, please, isn't there another way? You mean like the family meeting approach? Where mom and dad help pressure me into dropping this for the sake of family harmony? Maya flinched. We weren't trying to pressure you. Maya, you literally tried to steal my house. Our parents knew about it and helped cover for you. What exactly do you call that? She started crying again, but this time it felt different. Less manipulative. More genuinely desperate. I'll lose everything, she whispered. A criminal record? Any chance at a decent job? Probably jail time. Yes, I agreed. You will face consequences for your actions. That's how accountability works. And you're okay with that? Destroying your sister's life? I studied her face. The same face I'd been protecting and supporting for years. Maya had always been beautiful, charming, able to convince people to give her what she wanted. But sitting there in my living room, confronted with evidence of her crimes, she just looked young and scared. Maya, I said gently, I didn't destroy your life. You did. I'm just refusing to save you from the consequences anymore. She wiped her eyes with my throw pillow. Even in crisis, Maya made herself comfortable with my belongings. Will you visit me if I go to jail? The question broke my heart a little. Not because I felt guilty about reporting her crimes, but because it showed how completely Maya misunderstood our relationship. She thought family meant unconditional support regardless of behavior. I'd finally learned it meant love with boundaries. I don't know, I answered honestly. That depends on what happens next. Maya left my apartment 20 minutes later, with a promise to meet me at the police station at noon. I didn't entirely believe she'd show up, but it didn't matter. I had enough evidence to proceed with or without her cooperation. What do you think will happen next? Will Maya actually show up to take responsibility? Or will she try to run? Let me know your predictions in the comments below. The police station was busier than I expected for a Friday afternoon. I checked in at the front desk and explained that I needed to report identity theft and fraud. The desk sergeant directed me to Detective Morrison, a woman in her 40s with the patient demeanor of someone who'd heard every possible family crime story. Ms. Johnson, she said, reviewing my initial statement. This is quite a comprehensive case. You have video evidence of the alleged perpetrator committing these crimes? Hours of it, plus documentation from the real estate agency and records of all the fraudulent activities. Detective Morrison studied the printed screenshots I'd brought. And this is your sister? Yes, Maya Johnson, 24 years old. Has she been arrested before? No. This is her first offense, as far as I know. The detective made notes as I walked her through the timeline. Maya's access to my apartment, the weeks of preparation, the meetings with the realtor, the forged documents. Ms. Johnson, Detective Morrison said finally, I have to ask, is it possible your sister believed she had some legitimate claim to the property? Joint ownership? Inheritance rights? Anything like that? No, the apartment is mine alone. Maya knew she was committing fraud. And you want to pursue full prosecution? I thought about Maya's tearful face that morning, her genuine fear about jail time, the way our parents would react when they learned their baby girl was facing criminal charges. Then I thought about the years of financial exploitation, the elaborate planning that went into this betrayal, and the fact that Maya had never once apologized for the crime itself, only for getting caught. Yes, I said firmly. I want to pursue full prosecution. Detective Morrison nodded and began preparing the paperwork. As she typed, she mentioned something that made my blood freeze. I should mention, Ms. Johnson, when we run the property records for evidence, we'll also check for any pending transactions or liens. Sometimes these fraud cases get complicated if the perpetrator actually succeeded in initiating a sale. The room felt suddenly cold. What do you mean, succeeded in initiating a sale? Well, if your sister actually signed purchase agreements or initiated closing procedures, There could be additional legal complications. I hadn't thought about that possibility. What if Maya had gone further than just listing the apartment? What if she'd actually accepted an offer and started the sale process? Detective Morrison, I said carefully, how quickly can you check those records? Let me make a call. As she reached for her phone, mine rang. Unknown number. Hello? Ms. Stella Johnson, this is James Patterson from Patterson Legal Services. I'm calling regarding some irregularities we've discovered in a real estate transaction involving your property. My stomach dropped. What kind of irregularities? Ma'am, I think we need to meet in person to discuss this. Are you available this afternoon? James Patterson's law office was in one of those downtown buildings that screams expensive legal problems. As I sat in the waiting room, I tried to convince myself that whatever irregularities he'd discovered were minor technical issues that could be easily resolved. I was wrong. Ms. Johnson, Patterson said as he led me into his office, I represent Harbor City Title Company. We've been processing what we believe to be a legitimate sale of your apartment until some discrepancies came to our attention. He opened a thick file on his desk. 3 days ago, we received a purchase agreement for your property signed by Maya Johnson, claiming to be the owner. The buyers put down a $10,000 earnest money deposit. My mouth went dry. $10,000? The sale was scheduled to close next Friday. However, when we ran our standard ownership verification this morning, we discovered that Maya Johnson is not listed as the property owner. You are. I felt dizzy. Maya hadn't just been playing with the idea of selling my apartment. She'd actually accepted an offer and was 1 week away from completing the theft. Where is the $10,000 now? I asked. That's where this gets complicated. The earnest money was deposited into an escrow account managed by our office, but Maya Johnson provided banking information for where the funds should be transferred after closing. Her account? We assume so. We haven't verified those details yet, pending resolution of the ownership question. Patterson pulled out more documents. Ms. Johnson, I have to ask, did you authorize your sister to act on your behalf in any real estate transactions? Absolutely not. I had no idea she was even showing the apartment to buyers, let alone accepting offers. Then we're looking at a very serious fraud case. Not only did Maya Johnson misrepresent ownership, but she attempted to steal significant money from the buyers, and potentially would have received proceeds from selling property she doesn't own. The scope of Maya's crime was staggering. She hadn't just forged documents. She'd created an entire elaborate scheme to steal my apartment and pocket the sale proceeds. What happens to the buyers? I asked. That's our immediate concern. The Hendersons. They're a young couple buying their first home. They've already arranged financing, scheduled inspections, and planned their move. They're completely innocent victims in this fraud. I thought about the earnest young couple I'd seen touring my apartment in Maya's company. They'd looked so excited, so hopeful about buying their first home. Maya had been willing to destroy their dreams along with stealing my property. Can the sale be stopped? It already has been. We placed a hold on all transactions when the ownership discrepancy was discovered, but now we need to determine how to proceed legally. Patterson leaned back in his chair. Ms. Johnson, have you filed a police report about this fraud? I was literally at the police station when you called. Detective Morrison is handling the case. Good. You'll need to provide our office with copies of your police report and any evidence you have of Maya's fraudulent activities. We'll need to coordinate with law enforcement to ensure the Hendersons get their deposit back and that Maya faces appropriate charges. As Patterson explained the legal complexities, my phone buzzed with a text from Maya. Stella, we need to talk. It's urgent. I showed Patterson the message. She probably knows the sale was discovered. Don't respond to her directly. Any communication with Maya should go through your attorney or the police at this point. I don't have an attorney. You need one. This case involves real estate fraud, identity theft, and potentially multiple felony charges. Maya's crimes are more extensive than simple document forgery. I left Patterson's office with a referral to a criminal attorney and a new understanding of just how close Maya had come to successfully stealing everything I'd worked for. The earnest money deposit alone was more than Maya had ever contributed to any family financial crisis. She'd been willing to steal $10,000 from innocent buyers on top of stealing my apartment. Back at the police station, Detective Morrison reviewed the new information with the grim expression of someone whose case had just become much more complicated. Ms. Johnson, with this additional evidence, we're looking at multiple felony charges. Theft by deception, forgery, fraud, and potentially conspiracy if we can prove your parents knew about the attempted sale. My parents knew about the listing, but I don't know if they knew about the actual sale. We'll need to investigate that. Can you think of any reason Maya would have believed she could get away with this? I thought about Maya's confidence during our family dinners, her willingness to recommend the real estate agency she was already working with, her apparent belief that she could manipulate the situation to her advantage. Maya's always been able to charm her way out of consequences, I said. Our parents have spent her entire life bailing her out of problems and making excuses for her behavior. And you? I've been her financial safety net for years. Maya's never had to face real consequences for anything. Detective Morrison nodded. That might explain her confidence, but not her access to detailed information about your property. To forge ownership documents convincingly, she'd need more than just your signature. She was right. Creating believable forgeries of mortgage statements, tax records, and ownership papers would require significant knowledge of my financial situation. Detective, I said slowly, Maya house sat my apartment for a week. She had access to all my personal documents, my computer, my mail, so she could have photographed or copied anything she needed. Everything. Banking information, legal documents, even my signature from various papers. As Detective Morrison took notes, I realized something that made my stomach turn. Maya's betrayal hadn't been a desperate, last-minute decision. It had been a methodical, premeditated crime that she'd been planning since the moment I'd asked her to watch my apartment. She'd probably agreed to house sit specifically to gain access to the information she needed to steal my home. Ms. Johnson, Detective Morrison said, I need to ask, is there any possibility Maya had accomplices in this scheme? What do you mean? Forging this many documents, navigating real estate procedures, managing escrow accounts. It's sophisticated for a first-time criminal. Did Maya have help from someone with real estate or legal experience? I thought about Maya's confidence during the sale process, her knowledge of technical procedures, her ability to fool professional real estate agents and title companies. I don't know, I admitted. But you're right. Maya doesn't have experience with any of this stuff. We'll need to investigate that angle. If Maya had professional help, this could be part of a larger fraud operation. As I drove home from the police station, I realized that discovering Maya's crime had been just the beginning. The deeper the investigation went, the more complex and disturbing her betrayal became. But there was one silver lining in all of this. Maya had made a crucial mistake that was about to turn her elaborate scheme into evidence of her own guilt. She'd underestimated me completely. Again. That evening, I sat in my apartment with Bruce Lee curled up next to me, trying to process everything I'd learned. Maya hadn't just tried to steal my apartment, she'd created an entire criminal enterprise around that theft. My phone had been buzzing all afternoon with calls from Maya, my parents, and even Amanda Bradley from the real estate agency. I'd ignored them all, following James Patterson's advice to let all communication go through proper legal channels. But around 8 p.m., my doorbell rang. Through my security camera, I could see my father standing in the hallway, looking older and more tired than I'd ever seen him. Part of me wanted to ignore him too, but curiosity won. Dad, I said, opening the door but not inviting him in. Stella, we need to talk. About what? About this police report, about what you're doing to your sister. I almost laughed. Even now, with Maya facing multiple felony charges for trying to steal my home, Dad was making me the villain. What I'm doing to Maya? She's been arrested, Stella. They came to the house 2 hours ago and took her away in handcuffs. Your mother is hysterical. Good, I thought, but didn't say. Let Mom be hysterical about the consequences of enabling her precious daughter's criminal behavior. Maya was arrested because she committed multiple felonies, I said calmly, not because I reported them. She made a mistake. She tried to steal my apartment and pocketed $10,000 from innocent buyers. That's not a mistake, Dad. That's organized crime. Dad's face crumpled. $10,000? What are you talking about? Apparently Maya hadn't told our parents about the earnest money. This was about to get interesting. I explained about the completed sale agreement, the deposit money, and the fact that Maya had been 1 week away from successfully stealing my home and the buyer's money. That's impossible, Dad said weakly. Maya wouldn't. She couldn't. She did. I have video evidence of every step of the process. Dad leaned against my doorframe like he needed the support. Stella, please. She's your sister. Can't you find some way to work this out without destroying her life? Dad, Maya destroyed her own life when she decided to become a criminal. I'm just refusing to be her victim. But a criminal record, jail time. She'll never recover from this. Maybe she should have thought about that before committing multiple felonies. We stood there in my hallway, two people who'd spent decades navigating family crises, suddenly facing one that couldn't be solved with money or emotional manipulation. What do you want from me? Dad asked finally. Nothing. That's what you still don't understand. I don't want anything from any of you anymore. Stella, Dad, for 12 years I've been bailing this family out of financial problems. Maya's student loans, your business debt, Mom's medical bills, car repairs, mortgage payments. I've given you hundreds of thousands of dollars. Dad looked uncomfortable. We've been grateful for your help. No, you've been entitled to it. You assumed my money was your money. Maya assumed my apartment was her apartment. None of you ever asked what I wanted or needed. That's not true. When's the last time any of you asked how I was doing? Not financially. Personally. When's the last time you visited my apartment just to spend time with me? When's the last time you called to check on my life instead of asking for help with yours? Dad couldn't answer because we both knew the truth. I'd been an ATM to them, not a daughter or sister. Maya needs a lawyer, Dad said eventually. A good one. This is serious. Yes, it is. We can't afford— Don't. I held up my hand. Don't you dare ask me to pay for Maya's defense attorney after she tried to steal my home. Stella, please. She's family. Family doesn't commit fraud against each other, Dad. Family doesn't lie and manipulate and steal. What Maya did was unforgivable. Nothing is unforgivable between family. I looked at my father, the man who'd taught me to work hard, be responsible, and always help family in need. The same man who'd enabled Maya's irresponsible behavior and was now asking me to fund her defense against charges of trying to steal from me. You're wrong, I said quietly. Some things are unforgivable. And even if they weren't, forgiveness doesn't mean exemption from consequences. Dad left without another word. I watched through my security camera as he sat in his car in my parking lot for 20 minutes, probably calling Mom to report on his failed mission. An hour later, Mom called. Stella, she said without preamble, your sister is in jail. I know. She's scared and alone and needs her family. She should have thought about that before committing crimes against her family. You're being cruel. I'm being honest. Maya isn't in jail because I'm cruel. She's in jail because she's a criminal. She made a mistake. Mom, stop calling it a mistake. Mistakes are accidental. Maya spent weeks planning how to steal my apartment. She forged legal documents, lied to professionals, and accepted money from innocent buyers. Those are deliberate crimes. She was desperate. For what? She's been living rent-free in your house, driving a car I helped pay for with no responsibilities or consequences for anything. What was she desperate for? Independence. Then she should have gotten a job and earned it, not stolen it from me. Mom was crying now. Stella, please, I'm begging you. Drop the charges. Maya's learned her lesson. Has she? Because according to the police, Maya hasn't shown any remorse for the crimes themselves. She's only upset about getting caught. That's not true. Mom, when Maya called me this morning, did she apologize for trying to steal my apartment? Or did she just ask me not to report it? Silence. Maya isn't sorry for betraying me. She's sorry for facing consequences. And you and Dad aren't concerned about justice or accountability. You just want everything to go back to the way it was, with me solving problems and everyone else avoiding responsibility. What do you want from us? Mom asked. Nothing. I want nothing from any of you. And that's the problem. You can't understand a relationship that isn't based on me giving you something. After I hung up, I realized something important. For years, I'd believed that my family's financial exploitation was a character flaw I could fix with patience and boundaries. Now I understood it was a fundamental difference in values. They saw relationships as transactional. I thought they saw them as emotional connections. Maya's betrayal had forced me to see the truth. My family didn't love me despite taking advantage of me. They loved me because I allowed them to take advantage of me. Tomorrow, Maya would be arraigned on multiple felony charges. My parents would probably spend their savings on legal fees trying to minimize her consequences. And I would finally be free to build a life based on mutual respect instead of one-sided sacrifice. But there was still one more surprise coming that would show my family exactly how serious I was about being done with their manipulation. Because while they'd been focused on Maya's arrest, I'd been planning my next move. Something that would ensure they understood that the old Stella, the pushover who always bailed everyone out, was gone forever. Saturday morning brought an unexpected visitor. I was drinking coffee and reviewing emails when my doorbell rang again. This time, it was Maya's court-appointed attorney. Ms. Johnson, I'm Rebecca Santos from the Public Defender's Office. I represent Maya Johnson. I invited her in, curious about what Maya's lawyer wanted to discuss. I'll be direct, Santos said, settling into my living room chair. Maya is facing serious charges. Identity theft, fraud, forgery, and theft by deception. She's looking at significant jail time. I understand that. However, if you were willing to make a victim impact statement expressing forgiveness and requesting leniency, It could substantially impact her sentencing. There it was. Even through her lawyer, Maya was still trying to manipulate me into making her problems disappear. Ms. Santos, has Maya expressed remorse for her crimes? She's very sorry about how this situation has affected your family. That's not what I asked. Is Maya sorry for committing fraud against me, or is she sorry for getting caught? Santos hesitated. She regrets that her actions led to legal consequences. So she's sorry for getting caught. Ms. Johnson, Maya is young. A felony conviction will follow her for the rest of her life. It will impact her ability to get jobs, housing, loans. Good. Maybe facing real consequences will teach Maya something her family never did. Santos tried a different approach. What would it take for you to consider requesting leniency? Some form of restitution? Community service? I thought about that question seriously. What would it take for me to forgive Maya and help her avoid prison? Complete honesty, I said finally. A genuine apology that acknowledges the planning and deliberate nature of her crimes. Acceptance of full responsibility without blaming desperation or family dynamics. And a commitment to making genuine restitution. Not just paying back money, but rebuilding trust through consistent action over years. That seems reasonable. But Maya isn't capable of that level of accountability. She still thinks she's the victim here. She still believes family should protect her from consequences regardless of her behavior. Santos gathered her papers. Ms. Johnson, I have to ask, is there anything that might complicate this case? Any evidence that might suggest Maya had accomplices or outside help? Interesting question. Why do you ask? Some of the forgeries are quite sophisticated. The real estate transactions were handled with a level of professionalism that seems beyond Maya's experience. I'd been wondering about that myself. Maya's confident navigation of complex real estate procedures had seemed out of character for someone with no relevant experience. Have you asked Maya about accomplices? She insists she acted alone, but the prosecution is investigating whether this fraud was part of a larger pattern. After Santos left, I called Detective Morrison. Detective, Maya's lawyer just asked me about possible accomplices. Is there something I should know? We're following several leads. Maya's banking records show some unusual transactions in the weeks before your vacation. Large deposits that don't match her stated income. What kind of deposits? Cash deposits totaling about $8,000 over 6 weeks. When we asked Maya about the source, she claimed they were family gifts. Family gifts. That would be my money, passed through my parents and given to Maya as help with expenses. Detective, those might actually be legitimate. I've been sending money to my parents regularly, and they often redistribute it to Maya. We'll need documentation of those transfers to verify Maya's claims. After hanging up, I spent the afternoon gathering financial records to help the police understand my family's money flow. Bank statements, transfer receipts, even text messages discussing various financial emergencies I'd helped resolve. As I organized the documents, I realized something disturbing. The pattern of financial assistance to my family had intensified significantly in the months before my vacation. In January, Dad's business needed an emergency loan. February brought Mom's unexpected medical bills. March required Maya's car repairs. April saw increased temporary support for Maya's living expenses. Looking at it chronologically, it seemed like my family had been systematically draining my savings in the months leading up to Maya's apartment scheme. Around 5 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number again. Ms. Johnson, this is Detective Carson from the Financial Crimes Unit. I'm working with Detective Morrison on your sister's case. How can I help you? We need to meet in person to discuss some developments in the investigation. Can you come to the station tomorrow morning? What kind of developments? We'd rather discuss this in person. Can you be here at 9 a.m.? Should I bring my attorney? Long pause. That might be wise. After hanging up, I sat staring at my phone. Something about Detective Carson's tone suggested Maya's case had taken a significant turn. I called the criminal attorney James Patterson had recommended and left a voicemail requesting an emergency consultation. Then I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I poured myself a glass of wine and tried to relax. Bruce Lee seemed to sense my tension. He abandoned his usual spot by the window and came to sit directly next to me, resting his head on my leg. What do you think, boy? Is this getting more complicated than we expected? Bruce Lee's response was to lick my hand and settle in for what he apparently anticipated would be a long evening of emotional support. I was grateful for his presence. Tomorrow's meeting with the Financial Crimes Unit suggested that Maya's betrayal was about to reveal additional layers of deception I hadn't yet discovered. But whatever Detective Carson wanted to discuss, I was ready. After years of being manipulated and taken advantage of, I'd learned to document everything, trust my instincts, and prepare for the worst while hoping for justice. Maya had underestimated me when she decided to steal my apartment. My parents had underestimated me when they assumed I'd always prioritize family harmony over personal accountability. Tomorrow, I suspected, we were all going to learn just how thoroughly Maya had underestimated the consequences of betraying someone who'd spent years cleaning up other people's messes. Because if there's one thing you learn from being the family problem solver, it's how to investigate, document, and expose the truth. And Maya's truth was apparently more complicated than any of us had realized. Monday morning at the police station, I sat across from Detective Carson and my attorney, Sarah Mitchell, as Carson opened a thick file that made my stomach drop. "Ms. Johnson," Carson began, "your sister's case has uncovered what appears to be a sophisticated real estate fraud operation." I felt the color drain from my face. What kind of operation? Maya wasn't acting alone. We've traced connections to at least 3 other similar cases in the past year: properties owned by young professionals, temporary access granted to family members, followed by fraudulent sale attempts. Sarah leaned forward. "Are you suggesting Maya is part of an organized crime ring?" "We're suggesting someone has been coaching inexperienced accomplices in real estate fraud techniques. The forged documents in Maya's case show professional-level expertise in multiple handwriting styles and document aging." Carson pulled out photographs of Maya's forged papers. These weren't created by an amateur. Someone with significant experience in document fraud prepared these for Maya. I thought about Maya's confidence during the real estate process, her knowledge of technical procedures, her ability to fool professional agents and title companies. "Who was helping her?" I asked. "We're still investigating, but we have a suspect. Someone Maya was in contact with regularly during the weeks of your vacation." Carson slid a phone records printout across the table. Highlighted in yellow were dozens of calls between Maya's number and one labeled Trevor Harrison, real estate consultant. Trevor Harrison has been investigated twice for real estate fraud, but never charged due to lack of evidence. His business model appears to involve recruiting family members of property owners to commit fraud on his behalf. The scope of Maya's betrayal kept expanding. She hadn't just decided to steal my apartment. She'd partnered with a known criminal to do it. "How did Maya meet this Trevor Harrison?" Sarah asked. According to Harrison's business records, Maya contacted him 6 months ago inquiring about real estate investment opportunities. He apparently identified her as a potential recruit and began grooming her for this fraud. 6 months ago. Before my vacation, before I'd asked Maya to house sit, before I'd trusted her with my keys. "Detective Carson," I said carefully, "are you telling me Maya planned this for 6 months? We believe Maya was recruited and trained for 6 months, then waited for an opportunity to access your property. Your vacation provided that opportunity." The room felt like it was spinning. Maya's offer to house sit hadn't been helpful sisterly behavior. It had been the final step in a premeditated criminal conspiracy. "Where is Trevor Harrison now?" Sarah asked. "That's where this gets interesting. Harrison disappeared 3 days ago, right after Maya's arrest. We have a warrant out for him, but he appears to have fled the state." Carson pulled out more documents. "Ms. Johnson, we need to ask about your family's financial situation. Maya's phone records show extensive conversations with Harrison about your income, assets, and financial habits." "What kind of conversations?" "Harrison appears to have coached Maya on gathering information about your finances, your property value, and your personal schedule. Maya provided him with detailed intelligence over several months." I felt physically sick. Every conversation I'd had with Maya about work, money, my apartment, my travel plans, she'd been reporting it all to her criminal partner. "Detective," Sarah said, "what charges is Maya facing now?" "Conspiracy to commit fraud, organized real estate theft, identity theft, and potentially money laundering if we can prove she was part of Harrison's broader operation." "Money laundering?" Carson nodded grimly. "The $8,000 in cash deposits Maya received weren't family gifts. They were payments from Harrison for gathering intelligence and preparing for the fraud. My family's money. The emergency loans, medical bills, and temporary support I'd provided had been funneled to Maya, who'd used them to fund her preparation for stealing my apartment." "Ms. Johnson," Carson continued, "we need you to understand, this wasn't just a family dispute that got out of hand. Maya participated in a criminal enterprise that targets people like you specifically. People like me? Young professionals with valuable property, strong family relationships, and a history of financial generosity. Harrison's operation identifies targets through their family members, then recruits those family members to commit fraud. The systematic nature of Maya's betrayal was breathtaking. She hadn't made a desperate mistake. She'd been a willing participant in organized crime. "What happens now?" I asked. Maya's facing significantly more serious charges. Instead of local fraud charges, this is now a federal case involving interstate commerce and organized crime. Carson closed the file. Ms. Johnson, I need to ask, do you still want to proceed with prosecution? The question caught me off guard. Why wouldn't I? Because Maya is facing potential federal prison time now. 20 years minimum if convicted of all charges. Some families prefer to focus on recovering assets rather than pursuing maximum penalties. I thought about Maya sitting in jail, probably still believing she could charm her way out of consequences. I thought about my parents, frantically trying to figure out how to save their precious daughter from the results of her own choices. And I thought about Trevor Harrison, who disappeared when his operation was exposed, leaving Maya to face consequences alone. Detective Carson, I said firmly. Maya chose to participate in organized crime. She chose to target me specifically because she knew my financial situation and trusted relationship. She spent months planning to steal everything I've worked for. So you want to proceed with full prosecution? Absolutely. Maya made her choices. Now she can live with the consequences. After leaving the police station, Sarah and I discussed the implications of Maya's federal charges. Stella, Sarah said as we stood outside the courthouse, you should know. Your family is probably going to intensify their pressure on you to drop charges or request leniency. They can try. Federal prosecutors rarely offer plea deals in organized crime cases. If Maya goes to trial and loses, she's looking at decades in prison. Good. Maybe other potential recruits will think twice before partnering with criminals to steal from their families. That evening, I sat in my apartment with Bruce Lee, finally understanding the complete scope of Maya's betrayal. She hadn't just tried to steal my apartment in a moment of desperation. She'd spent 6 months working with a known criminal to systematically gather intelligence and plan the theft of everything I'd worked for. And she'd used my own generosity, the money I'd sent to help my family, to fund her criminal preparation. Tomorrow, Maya would learn that her fraud case had become a federal organized crime investigation. My parents would learn that their baby girl was facing decades in prison for crimes they'd helped enable. And I would finally be free to build a life where being generous didn't make me a target for the people who were supposed to love me most. But first, I had one more decision to make, because Detective Carson had mentioned something that would determine whether Maya faced 20 years in prison or life without parole. And that decision was entirely up to me. 3 weeks later, I stood in the hallway outside federal court, watching my parents emerge from Maya's plea hearing. They looked decades older, broken by the reality of their daughter's choices and the consequences that no amount of family manipulation could avoid. Maya had pled guilty to conspiracy charges in exchange for a reduced sentence of 12 years in federal prison. The plea deal required her full cooperation in locating Trevor Harrison and dismantling his fraud operation. 12 years. Maya would be almost 40 when she was released. Mom approached me hesitantly, her eyes red from crying. Stella, she said quietly, Maya wants to see you before they transfer her to federal prison. I know, I got the message. Will you visit her? I'd been thinking about that question for weeks. Maya had written me a letter from jail. Not the manipulative guilt trip I'd expected, but what seemed like genuine acknowledgement of her crimes and their impact. I'll think about it, I said. Dad joined us in the hallway, looking defeated. Stella, I need you to know. We had no idea about Trevor Harrison or any criminal conspiracy. We thought Maya was just desperate. I know, Dad. And I did know. The federal investigation had confirmed that my parents were unknowing enablers, not criminal accomplices. They'd created the conditions that made Maya vulnerable to recruitment, but they hadn't conspired in the actual fraud. What happens now? Mom asked. Now you learn to function as a family without using me as your financial safety net, I said. And I move on with my life. Move on? I'd been waiting for the right moment to share my news. I'm relocating to Denver. I got a promotion with my company's Colorado office. The shock on their faces was almost comical. They'd never considered that I might leave, might choose to build a life away from their constant financial crises and emotional manipulation. But we're family, Mom protested weakly. Yes, we are. And family means love and support, not exploitation and betrayal. When you're ready to have that kind of relationship, you know how to reach me. I walked away from my parents and out of the courthouse, feeling lighter than I had in years. The Denver job was real. An opportunity I'd been offered months ago but had initially declined because I thought my family needed me. Maya's betrayal had shown me the difference between being needed and being used. My apartment sold within 2 weeks of listing it properly. After paying off the mortgage and covering moving expenses, I had enough left over to buy a house in Denver with a large fenced yard for Bruce Lee and space for the home office I'd always wanted. On my last day in the city, I visited Maya at the federal detention center. She looked younger in her prison uniform, vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen since we were children. The confident manipulator was gone, replaced by someone who finally understood the weight of her choices. "Stella," she said as we sat across from each other in the visiting room. "I'm sorry." "Are you? For what specifically?" "For betraying you. For using your trust to steal from you. For working with Trevor to target you deliberately." Maya's voice was steady, clear. "I'm sorry for becoming the kind of person who could plan to destroy her sister's life for money." It was the apology I'd needed but never expected to hear. "Maya, what made you think you could get away with it?" She was quiet for a long moment. "Because you always saved me. Every time I messed up, you fixed it. I thought even if you found out, you'd find a way to make it okay. And now? Now I understand that love doesn't mean exemption from consequences. You loved me enough to let me face the results of my choices instead of enabling them." We talked for another hour. Maya told me about her cooperation with federal investigators, her genuine remorse for the families Trevor's operation had targeted, and her plans for prison education programs. "Stella," she said as our visit ended, "I don't expect forgiveness. I know what I did was unforgivable, but I want you to know, discovering who I really was, what I was capable of, it's changed me. Prison isn't punishment to me. It's accountability I should have faced years ago." 3 months later, I was settled in Denver with Bruce Lee, who'd adapted to mountain life with enthusiastic approval of hiking trails and off-leash dog parks. My parents called occasionally, stilted conversations where they updated me on their lives without asking for money or help. It would take time to rebuild trust, if that was even possible. Maya wrote letters regularly, real letters about books she was reading, classes she was taking, and genuine reflection on her choices. I wrote back sometimes, but our relationship would never be what it once was. From my home office window, I could see the Rocky Mountains and remember what it felt like to believe my worth was measured by my willingness to sacrifice for others. Trevor Harrison was captured 4 months after Maya's sentencing, arrested at a casino in Las Vegas where he'd been recruiting new accomplices. His trial would reveal the scope of his operation: dozens of families destroyed by fraud schemes that exploited love and trust. Maya's cooperation was instrumental in his conviction, and a sentence of life without parole. Sometimes people ask if I regret reporting Maya's crimes, if family loyalty should have outweighed justice. But love isn't about protecting people from the consequences of their choices. Love is about caring enough to let them face those consequences and grow from them. Maya's betrayal taught me that being generous doesn't require being naive, that being family doesn't excuse criminal behavior, and that the people who truly love you will respect your boundaries instead of constantly testing them. I still send lottery tickets to myself sometimes, not because I need the money now, but because they remind me that hope and possibility belong to me, not to people who would exploit my kindness. Bruce Lee is sleeping next to my desk as I finish writing this story, probably dreaming about the squirrels he chases in our new neighborhood. He's the only family member who's never asked me for anything except love and attention. If this story resonated with you, make sure to like and subscribe. Remember that protecting yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. Family relationships should be based on mutual respect, not one-sided sacrifice. And sometimes, the greatest gift you can give someone you love is the chance to face the consequences of their choices and become the person they're capable of being, even if it takes 12 years in federal prison to get there.